Hi there everyone, welcome back to Dandelion Delphi tutorials. We're going to have a look at the Supplementary 2015 question 2. In the older papers that used to be the OOP question, so this is for our grade 12s. You can now expect the OOP question in question 3. At the start of each question they always show you a screenshot of what the application should look like. Then we typically have a table explaining to us what the attributes are of the class, but you can also view that by just looking at your class and seeing what's in there. Now in this year we also had Java. Learners were able to choose between Delphi and Java, but we're going to ignore the Java, we're just focusing on Delphi. And we were asked to write code to declare these attributes. So it was important to read this carefully and make sure that we declare them as the correct data types. So press pause and try it yourself. Remember, you can download these papers from education.gov.za. They also gave us the names here of the attributes. They're quite long, but it would be important to match what the exam paper asks, because maybe some of it were part of provided code, so we would have to match those. A name of an applicant would be a string. A disposable income would be real. Some amount, home loan amount that you applied for, that would be real. Number of years, that would be an integer. And then the interest rate we would guess would be a real value as well. That's just because they are usually percentages. It's important to declare your attributes here at the top under private so that they are encapsulated. Remember, you need to study that for theory. So there's my applicant name, the income, interest rate, and loan amount as real, and then the years as an integer. These 4 marks were easy to score. So now they say we have to write a constructor that receives the following parameter values. They made it easy for us to tell us exactly what we need to do. These are the 3 values that we're receiving as parameters. We need to initialize the relevant attributes, the ones you declared there at the top. And then we need to initialize the number of years and the interest rates to 0. So press pause and try it yourself. Now keep in mind that these parameters are going to give these attributes values. So the name must be string because the field there or the attribute is a string. The income and the loan amount, that is being received, and they were both real as well. So make those parameters real. Then you're going to push Control-Shift-C, and remember F for first. They must go on the left of the assignment statement and your parameters on the right. Swapping them around would cause your program to produce no output. So that's important. So there's my 3 parameters that are giving my fields values on the left, and then the years and the interest are both then initialized to 0. The next question is asking us to write an accessor method. Now think quickly, 2 questions. Accessor methods, are they functions or procedures? And does this have a parameter or not? Answer to the first question, it's a function. Accessor methods are always functions, and we start them with get. And this accessor methods won't have parameters. And also it doesn't indicate here that it's receiving a value, but your accessor methods won't have any parameters. Press pause and try these 2 easy marks yourself. So as I said, it's a function. We start with get, and then what it's returning, and it's returning the applicant name, which is a string, and for that reason this function has a string data type. Then you're going to push Control-Shift-C, and this is simply result is assigned to the field name, F, applicant name. This question here says write a mutator method for attributes, years, and interest rate. Now here they don't tell us exactly what the mutator must be doing, and if they don't do that, then you would assume it receives a parameter for a new value for the years. Remember, it's method, so you're writing 2, and then you would, for the second one, then you would receive the interest rate and set it to the attribute. I must admit that after 2015 at least, the papers did start to tell us exactly what to do with our mutator methods. Now, mutator methods, functional procedure, mutators are always procedures. And this is what it's going to do. It's going to change the years and the interest rate. So write your two mutator methods, press pause, and I'll show you the memo soon. So here I have my two mutators. Mutators start with set. They're procedures, and they're going to receive values. Now, they're receiving, the one is the interest rate. It's receiving the rate. It's going to make a change to this interest rate here. So it's going to be real. And then the years is an integer because that field there is years. And then you're going to press Control-Shift-C. And this is very similar to what you do in your constructor create, where the fields receive a value on the left and your parameters give values on the right. So this is very similar, the years and the interest rate. It's really just your fields or attributes that are changing in there. And here we get 1 mark for uncommenting. So the code for calculate installment amount has been commented out, and all you have to do is remove the comments. So press pause and do that quickly. This is what mine looks like now. And as you can see, it uses F interest rate, F loan amount, and that needed to match. Remember at the beginning I said they gave us these long names, but it was important to use those long names because this calculate installment is making use of that, and that was provided code. We now need to write a method. So they're not saying whether it's a functional procedure called isApproved to return a Boolean value. So is it a function or a procedure? It's a function because it has the word return in there. And it would indicate whether this person's home loan was approved or not. And they had to meet these criteria. Now it's a bit confusing, I'll tell you why now, but let's just look at the bullets itself isn't confusing, it's what's been left out that's a bit confusing. Loans of more than 800,000 must be repaid over a period of more than 20 years. So if that loan amount is more than 800,000, the years must be greater than 20. Then it will be approved. Then also, if the monthly disposable income of the applicant for a loan up to 600,000. Now, up to means including, so less or equal to 600,000, must be at least 130% of the monthly installments. Now, here you had the calculate installment amount. You would use that in here. What confused me a bit was, what about the amount over 600,000 and less than 800? And apparently it looks like they are just all approved. So code it that way. Press pause and try it yourself. Here I have my function is approved of Boolean data type. No parameters were indicated. And I'm going to start off. I'm actually going to delete this. We don't need that. Oh, sometimes Delphi does that. I wish someone can give me a solution if you select something and it actually won't delete. Anyway, so I'm going to start off my result as true. So result is true, assuming the home loan was approved. Now, if this amount was greater than 800,000, let's just read again. Loans of more than. So don't include the equal sign there. So let's say the amount was greater than that, but the years were less than 25. We could also have said less or equal to 20. Oh, there it does it again. I forget. I think if you close Delphi and open it again, it would actually work. So if the years is less or equal to 20, then the result is false. Else, I can also test if this loan amount is less than 600,000 and their disposable income is less than 130% of the calculated installment. Now that comes from here. That's the provided code. I can use functions within functions. So I'm using this to calculate my monthly repayment. And the question here says it must be at least 130% of the monthly installments, my disposable income. So at least means greater or equal to. That means if my disposable income is less than this monthly installment times by my 130%. Remember, you can also rewrite this by saying times by 130 divided by 100. That's the same thing. Then my result would return a false. For any other situation, my result would stay true. Important that your functions always have a result that matches the data type of that function. So this is a Boolean function. We need to return a true or a false. Very often, learners forget to return either one of the other. So they would sometimes only return trues or only falses. Make sure when you have a function that your result would be allocated either a true or a false. Now we need to write code for our toString. Is it a procedure or a function? It's always a function, no parameters. And they give us the example here. This means that's my labels. And then these guys in brackets, that would be my field names or even possibly a function that I could use in there. So press pause and try your toString. There's our toString function. And by the way, when we've spoken about accessor methods and we spoke about Mutator methods. A toString is an auxiliary method. It just performs some function for us within our class. That's sometimes asked in theory. I think it's been asked twice. So we have to start our result with the first line. So you'll see there I have the labels. Don't be lazy with your labels. There's marks for them. My field. And either use a #13 or a #10 there to create the enter. Then I'm going to build onto that string. So result is result plus all the way through, starting every time with my labels. Here's all my labels. And then I'm going to display my disposable income. So that's F disposable income. I would display it as a currency, comma 10, comma 2. And here on the end, there's also a #13. And then here I have my floater string F for my loan amount, also a currency. And then the years, that was simply an integer string. And then the interest rate. F interest rate, FF fixed, because it's not a currency, it's just a number. So we usually just use either FF fixed or FF currency. And make sure that you show that percentage sign there at the end. Sometimes, especially like with the interest rate, we might be unsure of how many decimal places to show and our formatting there. So this is actually on page 15 where the toString is being called. This is the toString here. And there I can see they displayed only one decimal place. And for that reason, in my floater string F there, I'm only displaying one decimal point. Now is a good time to save and run your program just to see if you have any syntax errors. And then we can move on to the main form. So they tell us we have 3 text files, each containing information about different loan applicants. So if Abdul Bruver was the applicant, this would be his name of the text file. So there, his name and surname with a space and a .txt. Then they explain that each line in the text file then contains the name and surname, the monthly income, the monthly expenditure, and then the loan amount that they applied for. So here's the example of the 3 text files, and this is what you can expect in there. Maybe if you don't have the paper, take a screenshot, because I'll have to move on. So the GUI is supplied, blah, 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 and they have declared the object for us. So if you look at your main form here, and Now I have to scroll up. You can see there they have declared that for us. Loan OBJ of object type T home loan. In the button Find Applicant, we are now required to search for a name selected from the combo box. So we'll first need input from the combo box. And here they tell us now what we need to do. We need to test if the applicant was selected or not and display a suitable message. So that's just a bit of validation. Remember, we only do validation when we are asked. Test whether the text file with the applicant's name exists or not and display a suitable message, which includes their name, whether the applicant was submitted or not. If the text file is not found, then the applicant selected from the combo box and no home loan applicants was submitted must be displayed. I think it's best that we just code the top part here first. And here they give you an example of when John Smith entered his values, and then also if a home loan applicant was not submitted, disable the Evaluate Application button. Press pause and try that part first. Now you can code the next bit. This is if the file was found. Then we want to read the income, expenditure, and loan amount from the text file. We want to calculate the disposable income. Remember, the income and expenditure was in the text file, so we need to subtract the expenditure from the income to work out what is the disposable income. That means that I have received so much money, but I have so much that I have to give out every month. And what is the bit that is left over? That's disposable income. Then I can instantiate my object. Just ignore the parts with the slashes. That was for Java. And then we have to enable this button. So press pause and try it yourself. We first had to test if the applicant selected or if one of these values from this combo box here was selected. So we test for that first before we get input, else this code here will crash and we'll get a runtime error if they haven't selected anything. So there we're testing. If the item index is -1, it means they haven't selected anything. And now we have to display, please select an applicant. And I've just used an exit here. You could have put all of this in an else and then long begin and end. But the exit works quite well for if statements, as long as that if statement is not inside of a loop. Remember, we're not allowed to use exit inside of a loop. Then I get the name of the person. Remember, this code works for radio groups and this boxes as well. So object.item square bracket object.item index. Now I have the name they selected from the combo box. The file name has a .txt to it, so I'm using the file name there and add .txt. Now I'm going to clear the rich edit to display later on, and there I'm going to test if the file using this file name that I've just built, so whatever the guy's name and surname is, .txt, if that is not true, that means that this file was not found in the folder where this program is saved. Then I have to display in the rich edit no home loan application was submitted by, and I have to display their name. So that's why I use two different variables here, one for the name and one for the file name, because I have to display the name and surname there as well. Alternatively, instead of doing this, you could have added this code here, but we're going to use it again. So it's simpler to just store it as a variable because I'm going to use that same variable in a signed file. We had to then disable the button evaluate. Now remember, we don't have a disabled property, we only have enabled properties. So the enabled property needs to be set to false, and that is disabling. Don't forget that. And also an exit, because I don't want to continue to read from a text file that doesn't exist. Now I'm going to do my normal assign file, T file, S file name, which is the name and surname of the person plus the .txt, and my reset. This is what our code would look like when we want to read from a file. I always just in comments place data from my text file in here, just so that I can see exactly what I'm dealing with. Now, there's no need for a loop here. We know the first line contains the name and the surname of the person, so T file, and store it as S name. Then our read line into our income, that's my income. Now, they told you in the paper, so now you have to go back again, and you would have to look at, what did they say here? Name, income, expenditure, in that order. So just remember that a read line does not always have to have a string argument there as the second argument. It can be real as long as the data you're reading from the text file, because here I'm reading that value into this variable here. As long as they are compatible, you can use any data type in here. And then the expenditure is the next line, and then the loan amount. So now I've read, that's the loan amount. Now I've read all 4 lines from my text file. And now first, I need to determine the disposable income. So the disposable income was the income minus my expenses. Oh, better word than expenditure, for me anyway. Not being a English first language speaker, expenses are a bit easier for me. So there we have our rich edit. We had to display that we have found someone for this guy. So we can use S name there, or we could also use S app name. Those two have the same value at the moment. There I'm calculating my disposable income, and now I have to instantiate my object. Now remember my little trick, if you've watched other videos, you copy this out where they declared it for you, the object. You're now going to paste it here. You add an equals to make an assignment statement. You add dot create, and you open the bracket, and if everything above this code is working, then you'll have a hint there that tells you, remember nod, in which number, order, and data type I need to send my arguments. These are the parameters listed in my class for my constructor create. I'm just going to comment this out here because we have that there. And we have to send it. Remember, if we go back, let's just quickly go back and see, because maybe your comment doesn't work. Then you have to come back here and you see, okay, name goes first. Well, let's start with number. I have 1, 2, 3 parameters. I must have 3 arguments. That's the N for nod. O is order, name, income, loan. And then lastly, data type. The D for nod is for data type, string, and 2 reals. So we have to match that here with our local variables that we read data from our text file from. So there we have 1, 2, 3, order, name, income, and then loan. And then finally string and 2 real variables. And voila, I've instantiated my object. The question then asks you also to display a message that you have instantiated it. Did it? Now I have to go back and see the question again. I don't actually think they said that, so there won't be marks for that. Don't worry if you left that out. We don't need that. Okay. Then we have to enable our button, the BTN Evaluate button. That's this button here. And remember to close the file. Whenever you have an assign file, you must always have a close file. Okay, so now it is time to run and test your program. And we are going to test, well, let's try John Smith. And it tells us there, okay, John Smith haven't been found. And they didn't actually give us an example here. We're only going to get some output there. But you can test your program just to see, we know that guy is there. There we go. We see we have found him, and there we can evaluate his application. So remember, we wrote those 2 mutator methods, and here they say the user is going to select the number of years from a combo box, and then the interest rate they're going to enter in a text box, and then we have to use those 2 mutator methods to update the information for this home loan applicant. Press pause. The question is not complete yet, but I'm going to scroll down. Try this part yourself. So now we need to test whether the loan was approved or not. Remember, we wrote a function for that. And if the loan was approved, we needed to show the details by making use of our toString method in our rich edit. And display then a message after that, loan approved with monthly installments. And those brackets indicate that we would probably make use of another method from our class. Remember, they provided this one for us. And we can call it in here. And then they give us an example of output when it was approved. So I'm going to move it up here. And then I think you have all the information. You're going to test if it's been approved or not. This part is for if it has been approved. So press pause, try it and test it. Take note of that hidden question here. And the question is not done yet. This is now for the false part. So if it hasn't been approved, then we had to display the applicant's name and surname in the message. Now remember, you wrote that accessor method. It was important here to make use of it. They don't always tell you what to use, but use as many functions and procedures from your class as you can. Whenever you see a question and you can remember, oh yeah, we wrote that get function for the applicant's name, make use of it. Press pause. This is the end of this question and, well, the whole of question 2. I'll show you the memo soon. Here we're getting input from the combo box. Again, that same code, item, square brackets, combo box.item index. And we want to store it as an integer because remember, if you go to set years, remember we have p years there, that's an integer. So it's important here that this parameter is also integer. And then they're entering the interest amount or percentage, they're entering in this text box there. And we have to call our two mutators. They are procedures, so they stand on their own. It's the name of the object, dot, and my procedure name, set interest rate with its argument r_interest to send the parameter, where are we? P rate a value, so that P rate can give F interest a rate. That's the flow of the data here. And then also for set years, same thing. I years is going to give P years a value. P years is going to give F years a value. Then I've cleared the rich edit and now we need to test if it has been approved. Now remember, is approved is a Boolean function. Remember, it had a Boolean data type. So loan, the name of the object, dot is approved. You can use it as is or equals to true. Oh goodness. Equals to true. Both of them would do the same thing. Our if statements automatically check if Boolean variables and functions are true. What is important is that it's part of another statement. Since is approved as a function, it's part of the if statement. It can't stand on its own like these two procedures. This is a good example of seeing these all are procedures. That one is a procedure. And this one here is a function. And then we have to call our toString, which is also a function. So you can see it's part of another statement. It's part of the output of my rich edit, loan.toString. And there's my hidden question. Remember, I gave you a hint there, empty line there. So make sure you have your empty line. And I've just coded over 2 lines so you guys can see everything else. The code runs all the way off the screen, but you can do all of it in 1 line. The loan approved for the monthly installment of, this is also another function. This is the one they gave us. Calculate, that all we had to do here, remember, we just removed those comments. So this is going to return the monthly installments for me, and that's what I have to display as a currency. And you can double check, it is displayed with 2 decimal values. If the loan was not approved, we then say name of applicant, and remember we wrote that accessor again. This is a function, part of another statement. The accessor method, There we go. It returns the applicant's name in its result, so it will display their name and surname there. And then also you saw that below that, loan not approved, so we had to add that to our rich edit. Now we can quickly test our program, and it would be a good idea to use the examples of output. They did use Abdul here, and the values there, now we have to look here. They say 750,000, 750,000, so there we go. Oh, that was in the text file. 20 years, and 9.0 is the interest rate. You could have just entered 9 as well. Evaluate, yes, we got it. Now we just must make sure our values are correct. The loan amount, there's my disposable income, 15,500, and then my loan amount, 750,000, 20 years and 9, that just comes from there. And then, well, this is all my toString, remember, and then my empty line, and then there is the monthly installments, and that matches my output there, so that's great. Now we can select the next output, so we need to go and find Xavier. Xavier, click there, so we can start a new output. His is 870,000 over 20 years with an interest rate of 9, so that stays the same. The amount, remember, is in our text file, so that would already be in the RAM of the computer. And when I click on Evaluate Application, it should say that it's not approved. Great! Thank you guys for watching Dandelion Delphi tutorials. Please leave some comments or ask questions if something is unclear, and I'll answer you online. Hope to see you soon!